Welcome to Financial Issues, where we join reality with truth, helping you make the most of your money by honoring God with your investments. Now listen in as we give you the practical tools and advice you need to become a biblically responsible investor.
Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome back to Financial Issues. Hey, folks, wanted to let you know something here. We do have Shana with us. We're having a little bit of technical difficulties getting her connected, so we're going to try to get Shana connected as quickly as we possibly can during this segment here to get her on here. So you can pray for that we'd be able to get those tech issues figured out here. But, you know, the beauty of having multiple people who can carry us through the show is that if one of us can't host, then the other one can step up and do that. So I'm trying to fill that role here as best I can. I got Sam to help me out as well. And boy, we're excited to be here with you today, folks, nonetheless.
The show must and always does go on,
It always goes. 9:05 Eastern Time always comes. You know that, Sam? It always comes.
You know, I have a theater background, so I know about this. I know how it works. You get out there, you do the thing, you dance.
That's right.
People clap,
That's right.
Hopefully.
Now, fortunately, we don't dance on this show. We just talk.
No.
So
they probably don't want to see that.
Yeah, absolutely. But good to be here with you all today. Hey, a quick announcement here. Our conference call is in 2 days. We have a partner conference call coming in 2 days. That's Thursday, January 16th. Be on the lookout for an email with the call-in information. You can expect that probably in the next day or so. I've not seen that email come through yet, but you can expect it to come through soon. And that'll have the call-in information for you. It's partner specific. And if you are listening to this and you're not a partner and you want to listen to that conference call, you can become a partner today and you can join that conference call on Thursday live. Shana will have some great information for us, I have no doubt. Well, let's open it up here in the scriptures, folks. 1 Peter 2, verse 16 says this: live as people who are free, not using your freedom as a cover-up for evil, but living as servants of God. Now, I believe freedom in Christ is a gift to be stewarded well. This is a stewardship issue, folks. Just like our money, just like our families, just like the gospel, our freedom in Christ is a gift that we need to steward well. Now, the interesting thing about this is the irony of our freedom is that we're only free in Christ when we submit to Christ as our master. When we become a servant of Christ, or actually a better translation of the Greek word doulos is a slave. True freedom comes in enslavement. Kind of ironic there. We find true freedom when we become slaves to Christ, when we abandon our own desires to be our own masters, and we follow after Christ and submit to Him. Now, some will argue that because we're free in Christ, we should then be allowed to exercise the freedom to do whatever we want. And this is simply not true. That is not true freedom. That's actually far more closer to slavery than it is to freedom. Being able to do whatever your wicked heart desires is actually a picture of being enslaved to your desires. That's not freedom. Freedom in Christ means that we have broken free from the chains of sin by the power of Christ, and we're now free to do good, truly, to live virtuously and to genuinely honor Christ in our hearts with the life that He's given us. So I hope I can encourage you this morning, folks, to be a good steward of the freedom you've been given. And the way you do this, pretty simple, is by living according to the law of God. David tells us many times in the Psalms that the law of God brings life to our bodies. It brings freedom. So let's live in the light of that freedom today as good stewards of that gift God has given to us. Okay, folks, moving here now to the markets. So yesterday, the markets were kind of mixed. Looked like they were trying to break out of a couple rough days they've been having and a tough week last week, actually, to start off. Tech stocks were pulling down the NASDAQ, and the S&P 500 was following suit as well. By midday, the Dow Jones was the lone major index that was kind of hanging in there. The other averages were trending downward. By late afternoon, it was kind of the same deal, although the losing indices were starting to make a comeback a little bit as the day wore on. And before the bell, they actually were sort of even more on the way to that comeback there. So by Monday's closing bell, the Dow was up almost a full percentage point. The S&P was up about an eighth. The NASDAQ was down about a third of a percentage point. Folks, I got great news. I am told here that Shana is back and she is here with us. So Shana, if you can hear me, can you just say something?
Yep.
Hey, there she is. Good to have you, Shana. I just did the markets and I did a verse of the day, so the floor is yours.
Okay, sounds good. All right, we're a little bit off this morning, but we're here. We're rolling. Our phone lines are open. I don't know if Seth mentioned that or not, but
I did not, but thank you.
610-363-1110. If you want to get your call queued up today, you're going to have to do it quickly. So 610-363-1110. You will be the first caller in the queue. Well, we had important inflation data come out this morning. The first of two reads, we got the PPI inflation for the month of December. Now, the Producer Price Index measures what we call wholesale inflation. So it measures inflation that is experienced by those companies that are producing the goods and services that we as consumers end up buying. So for the month of December, and sorry, we're having all kind of technical difficulties this morning. For the month of December 2024, PPI rose 0.2% month over month. That brings the year over year number to 3.3. We also get measurements for core PPI. So core PPI is the number that the Fed looks more at because it excludes food and energy because they say it is volatile. So it's supposed to even out some of the volatility that they see in the inflation numbers. And the core PPI this month came in at 0% month over month. So I'm sure the Biden administration is going to take victory laps about that, saying,
Yay.
That there's no inflation, when essentially that is not quite true. It just measures zero inflation from the previous month. Year over year, core PPI inflation sits at 3.5%. So as you can see, we are still experiencing some inflation. So the core PPI metric has gone from 1.5% to 3%. That's the range that it was in pre-pandemic. So we're looking at the years between 2015 and 2020. Now, as a result of the response to the pandemic, the economic response to the pandemic, shutting down the world's economy and pumping trillions and trillions of dollars into consumers' hands when the supply chain was dried up, led to unprecedented inflation. So we saw PPI go from that 1.5% to 3% range to 9.7% is where it peaked out in March of 2022. Now, since then, we've been in a disinflation trend as we have seen inflation slow down. It has not become non-existent, but it got all the way down to year over year read at 1.8%. That was December of 2023. Since December of 2023, we've gone from a 1.8% annualized number to now 3.5%. That's almost 100% increase in the pace of inflation during that time period. So the markets were sort of muted. I think Seth already covered what the markets did yesterday, but after the PPI release this morning, the markets jumped about 0.5%. I don't know what the pre-market's doing right now. Let's see if I can see really quickly. Looks like they're indicating an open of up a quarter of a point to 0.4%. So another interesting number, and I hope we have time to get to it here in this first segment, but is oil. So oil, last I looked early this morning, is at a little over $78 a barrel. From September through December of 2024, oil prices were below President Biden's $72 target for refilling the SPR. But how much of the SPR has been refilled since President Biden or the Biden administration set out to essentially drain it to get oil prices down ahead of the 2022 midterm elections. So President Biden came into office with about 638,000 barrels in the 726,000 barrel tank that the SPR would hold. Now, by summer of 2023, we were down, and I'm sorry, I can't even see my notes here.
Yeah, Shana, I'm seeing we were down around 347,000 by the summer of 2023. I remember we had talked a lot about that when that was happening, and we were baffled by that, how Biden could possibly do something like that. Just crazy.
Yeah. Got them fixed now.
Yeah, good.
The Biden administration has only replaced about 40,000 of the 250,000 barrels that it released from the SPR between 2021 and the month right before the midterm elections happened in 2022. So we left 2024 with oil prices around $70. Prices are up more than 10% since just the end of 2024. So what's got it on the rise now? Well, probably going to have to keep you in suspense for a couple of minutes because we are coming up on a break here. So we'll get to the reasons why and what's going on there after we come back from a break. Our phone lines are open. If you want to be the first caller in the queue today, 610-363-1110. Don't go anywhere. We're going to take a short break and then we'll be back with more financial issues.
Navigating through investment options can be challenging, especially when you're determined to uphold your God-given values. Every dollar you invest is a vote for the world that you want to live in. Let your values guide your investment decisions and help to shape the culture in which we live. Become a beacon of light and pave the way with biblically responsible investing. Timothy Plan, where faith and finance collide. Before investing, carefully consider the fund's investment objectives, risks, charges, and expenses of the investment company. This and other important information can be found in the fund's prospectus. To obtain a copy, visit timothyplan.com or call 800-846-7526. Read each prospectus carefully before investing. Investing involves risk, including the potential loss of principal.
In a time when children are facing unprecedented challenges, the gospel stands as the greatest source of hope. At Crossroads Kids Club, we have the incredible opportunity to bring the message of Jesus into public schools nationwide. Join us in sharing the life-changing hope of the gospel with the next generation. The need is urgent, but God's love is powerful. Together, we can offer Christ's love to children who are longing for it. To join us, visit reachourschools.com. That's reachourschools.com.
I found out I was pregnant when I was 21 years old. For me, I was scared, I was shaking. They do an ultrasound, and that's when everything changed. When I saw my baby, and when I heard her heartbeat, that was it. We've seen the hand of God ever since we stepped into the pregnancy center.
To find out how you can support the life-saving mission of Preborn, go to preborn.com/FISM.
Welcome back to Financial Issues. Thanks for sticking with us today through our rocky start with the technical issues. But
sometimes
we're
it just
good now.
Betrays us, doesn't it, Shana?
It
but
does.
we fight through it.
It does.
That's right.
Technology's great. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here at all.
That's right. That's right.
Sometimes it's just user error. Yeah. I think it was my fault this morning.
No. We got you now.
We need an AI or something to help us with these things.
Yeah, it was a really simple one. Thank goodness. Well, so I was talking about before the break, oil prices, and we left 2024 with oil prices around $70 a barrel. They're upwards of $78 a barrel, 78 to 80, depending on which one you follow. But prices are up more than 10% since year end. So what's got things on the rise now? Well, how about a nice parting gift from the Biden administration and a fresh round of Russian sanctions? On January the 10th, 2025, the U.S. Treasury Department imposed sanctions on 2 Russian oil producers and 183 vessels suspected of being part of Russia's shadow fleet that has been used very successfully to avoid sanctions up to this point. Now, the first set of sanctions that the Biden administration put on were sort of counterproductive. They did not cut off Russian oil from the world. It just made it cheaper, under $70 a barrel, and Russia was still able to sell mostly to China, India, and a handful of others. So Russia has been using this shadow fleet of approximately 600 vessels, many of which are aging and poorly maintained, making the left's climate police heads explode. But these vessels are often engaged in practices such as changing flags, falsifying positions, conducting ship-to-ship transfers to obscure the origin of the oil. And the fleet has grown by nearly 70% year on year, transporting an estimated 4.1 million barrels a day as of June 2024. So, Russia has used these tactics to evade the sanctions that were placed on them at the beginning of their invasion to Ukraine. So these sanctions, this fresh round of sanctions, have intensified efforts to disrupt Russia's oil exports by targeting the key producers, those two key producers, and some of the vessels that are used in this shadow fleet. So many of the world's refiners, particularly those in China and India, that were previous to last week, they were able to buy Russian oil very cheap, are now scrambling to buy it from other sources. So we need to keep an eye on what this could potentially do to inflation. All right, looks like we have a call in the queue. Let's get to Jeff. Jeff's calling from North Carolina. Hi, Jeff. You're live on Financial Issues.
Thank you. Good morning, Shana. Good morning, Seth. And all of you.
Hey, Jeff.
Appreciate everything you do so much. I haven't called in a while, but I have a question. Early on, I know speaking with Dan, he would say, generally speaking, when you purchase a stock or whatever, in this case, the financial FRs, preferreds, to put market in there when you're buying it. Well, when I go to my Fidelity account and put market to order, I'm trying to replace FR31. It says limit order. And I know that's got something to do with a number, don't buy it under this or over that. But what number do I put in there? Just it won't let me buy it unless I put a figure in there.
Yeah, so what you would want to do if it's if the current price is say $24.90, just put a little bit higher in there. So put like $25.10. But what you're telling the system is that you want to buy a certain number of shares, but you don't want to pay more than a certain amount. So if it's forcing you to put in a limit order, then you can just put in a price that's just a little bit above what it's
like a quarter, 25 cents or any. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. That should work.
So I look at the current price, and then I just add 20 cents or whatever it might be to that.
Sure. Yep. That's a good way to do it.
Okay, I got another one. Tax reporting on some of the preferreds is special tax reporting. I know nothing about taxes. What does that mean? Is that like you get a statement or something saying you have to record that, or?
Yeah, so if you are holding your preferreds in a taxable account, of course, the dividend that you get is technically called a dividend. The dividend that you get is taxable, and it's reported on a 1099. So every year about this time, brokerages are getting their 1099 statements ready. What I typically see is that they're not usually out until end of January, maybe into February. So that should report all of your dividends and interest that you earn in your brokerage account, or you may get one from your bank as well.
Right. Okay.
If you're holding these in an IRA, though, you're not going to have them. Okay. Yeah. So you won't have them reported.
Oh, okay. Well, that's nice to know, because I'm like, man, I don't know what to do with this either.
Yeah.
Oh, good.
All right.
I think that's it. I had another one, but it slipped my mind. I'll call you back.
All right, Jeff. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, and God bless you guys.
Thanks for calling, Jeff. That was great, because
take care.
God bless you,
our
brother.
question of the day today was about preferreds too.
Jeff must be thinking in line with our show notes here, Shana. Yeah, you're exactly right. Robert from Texas had a question he put on social media a little while ago, and he was saying, I'd love to hear Shana's tutorial on preferreds, the ins and outs of why companies create them, number of shares placed in the market, risk versus return, etc. So, Shana, what are some of the most important things that we should know about preferreds?
All right, so I guess we can start with the basics, like what is a preferred?
Yeah.
But a preferred is really considered a hybrid between a debt and equity. So whenever a company issues common shares of its stock, that is a way for the individual investor or institutional investors to become an owner of the company. So when you see a company, well, I hate to give an example because someone might take it as a recommendation, but a company that you shop at every day, or maybe that you recognize and you think, man, I bet this is a really good business, and I'd like to get a piece of the action. Well, you can actually become an owner of the company by buying the outstanding shares of their common stock. Well, companies a lot of times operate with debt. So, they use other people's money to, fund their cash flows. A lot of times to get started, companies do this, and then, they'll manage their debt accordingly. So a preferred stock is a way that companies raise funds, raise capital for their operations. So whenever they decide to borrow money, they can do one of a couple of things. They can go to, a financial institution. They can make a loan. They can issue common stock, or they can issue preferred stock. And when they issue preferred stock, or they can also issue bonds, which are debt instruments. So when a company issues a debt instrument, it's kind of like if you're looking at the 10-year treasury or the 5-year treasury. It's basically the way that a bond works is, whenever a company sells a bond, they get capital in return. Somebody else buys that bond. The company gets the use of the cash, and they agree to pay interest on that debt, usually every 6 months, as long as the debt exists. And then at some point in the future, at some specified time period, whatever the issue says, whether it's 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, the company agrees to pay back that money, to return the principal to the purchaser of that bond, and they don't have to pay interest anymore. So it's a way of borrowing money. So a preferred stock is a hybrid between debt and equity. So it looks a lot like fixed income. The companies will issue shares of preferred stock. It's typically at $25 a share, and they'll agree to pay a fixed dividend on that purchase, and you get your dividend. Most of the time it's quarterly, just like their regular common stock dividends. Sometimes it's semi-annually, sometimes it's even monthly. And so the company issues the preferred stock. They say what the rate is. That determines the cash flow on it. And then, of course, once they're issued, like all of the ones that are on our list, they trade in the secondary market. So they're typically very liquid, at least the ones that we choose, and you can sell them if you need to redeem them early. Somebody else will buy them. The price is going to fluctuate based on what current interest rates do, because the cash flow never changes. And so some of the risks, though, are they safe as the bonds? Not quite. So bondholders have a primary position should the company fail, should they go bankrupt in the form of total liquidation. The bondholders are going to get their money back first, then the preferred stockholders, and then the common shareholders. But it does represent a great way to get some steady income.
Yeah, that's awesome, Shana. And that really leads to my last question: is how might these be utilized in a successful strategy?
Well, I can speak to our strategy, which I think has been very successful. So, our stand on fixed income is that we want to balance it between getting a great rate, or the best rate that we can, on the portion of fixed income that we're going to have in our portfolio, and we want to try to have as little volatility as possible. So part of our strategy, and this is the part that goes towards getting the great interest rate, is preferreds. And so, when you compare everything that's out there for fixed income, there's a lot. We narrow it down quite a bit. If you look at our broad list for fixed income, you're only going to find a handful of things there, and that's just really specific to our philosophy. But, if you look at the 10-year treasury right now is paying 4.8%. CDs are paying somewhere in the right below 4% range to 4.5% range. Previously, we did have a window where we could get a much better rate than what we can get now. So we sort of shifted to the preferreds. The preferreds on our list are yielding anywhere between 6 and a little bit over 8%. So I think that represents a great place to put these things into your portfolio to get some steady income.
Awesome, Shannon. We're at that point where I'd love to get one more question about it. I don't think we're going to have time for it.
Well, folks, thanks for hanging around with us today. I know we started out a little bit rough, but I think we brought it home. So we are going to have more to come in the show that we hope that you're going to stick around. If you are listening on an outlet that only carries the short version, the first 30 minutes of the show, we encourage you to make sure that you have our phone app, because then you can listen to the show whenever it's convenient for you. You can make sure to get all of the content there. You can watch previous episodes, and you can do it when it's convenient for you. For everybody else, hang around. We're going to be back with more financial issues right after this.
In the last 10 to 15 years being in ministry, being married, something that has been constant in our lives is Samaritan Ministries. As we've moved, we've had babies, we've had different things come up, we have just been able to rely on Samaritan in ways that we never really even thought about before becoming members.
Our heart's desire is to plant roots and be in a place for a really long time. It's how we were raised. We see the benefits of that, but we also see the open-handedness of being used by the Lord wherever He calls, because we just assumed when we started pursuing church planting, the quickest way to get from point A to point B is a straight line. And with the Lord, sometimes you find out it looks a lot more like this. And yet, Samaritan was with us through the entire thing.
We didn't have to look into, we have to change insurances now because we've moved states or whatever the case may be. And it's just been a real blessing to us in different phases of life.
I'm Kyle.
I'm Colleen.
And we're the Gen X.
And we're Samaritan members.
I just love the first book of Exodus. The king says the Jews are too many. Get rid of them. I command you to kill the firstborn. But the midwives to the Hebrews heard the order, and what did they do? They defied it. And God dealt favorably with the midwives and gave them families. He blessed them for loving life. He blessed them for saving babies. We have re-entered the death cult in this country. You think about how much we elevate death, whether it be the chopping off of parts and we call it transgender care, whether it be shouting our abortion, and you see it so beautifully in John 10:10. It is the divide of the entire scriptures. Now, most people would say John 3:16, but think about it. The enemy has come to lie, steal, cheat, and destroy. I have come to give life and life more abundantly. That's the whole ball game, everybody. It is everything. And we have to have the joy of Jesus Christ to enjoy life and to protect it. It's a gift from above. And Preborn is leading the charge.
Pharrell came to Crossroads as a fourth grader. His name had been brought to my attention by the school principal. She was concerned about the direction he was heading.
I remember I wasn't the best kid. I got into trouble a lot.
He became a very active part of Crossroads Kids Club.
Mr. Engel, he was the leader that really impacted my life in so many ways. I honestly didn't want Crossroads to end.
We would invite all the students to come to our youth group here at Waterfront.
I felt God saying, come home, come to me. It felt like I was set free.
And I'll never forget the day when we had the privilege and the honor to baptize Pharrell.
I hugged Mr. Engel. I don't know if he understands. I'm truly, thankful to have him through the whole journey. If it wasn't for Crossroads, I probably wouldn't be in the place that I am right now. I wouldn't be a follower of Christ.
Help reach more kids like Pharrell with the hope of the gospel. Visit reachOurSchools.com.
Securities offered through G.A. Reppel & Company, a registered broker-dealer and investment advisor, member FINRA and SIPC. Opinions expressed by Shana are hers alone and are for informational purposes only, and do not necessarily represent those of G.A. Reppel or the outlet on which you are listening. You should consider how the information applies to your situation prior to personally implementing it, and consult any financial professional you work with to make sure it's applicable to your financial plan.
Welcome back, folks, to Financial Issues. It was great to have Shana on the show for us for a little bit there. You can pray for her. She is also recovering from a little bit of a sickness as well. Folks, we will have the partner commentary up this week. It's going to be a little bit later. Normally, it's up at this point. You can expect that up probably, I'm going to say, later today or tomorrow would probably be the time to look for the partner commentary for this week. Also, speaking of this week, we have a partner conference call on Thursday. So make sure you mark your calendars for that. You will get an email in the next day or so with all the information for that conference call, the time, the access code, all that stuff that you need for it. So real quickly here, folks, let's take a look at the markets. They just opened up. We mentioned in the beginning of the show, Shana had talked about what they were looking like today. Everything's in positive territory today. It looks like could be a comeback day. We'll see the Dow Jones is up 0.33%. S&P 500 is up 0.5%, and the NASDAQ is up 0.75%. So a bit of a light inflation report, and might be seeing a rebound in tech shares, which, you know what, that just tends to happen with the markets. We saw a lot of sell-offs, and now might be seeing the upswing again. This is normal market behavior, it seems like. So, well, let's shift gears here to one of my favorite topics that we get to talk about throughout the week with Sam. It's the weekly BRI Exam with Sam. And boy, we got a doozy here today, Sam, don't we?
You just like it because it rhymes.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I feel clever because we sort of came up with it,
Yes.
It's pretty, it's easy to rhyme stuff with Sam, especially when it's exam.
Dr. Seuss did it. So.
That's exactly right. Yeah. If he could do it, why not us?
Why not? Yeah, that's right.
So, Sam, what do we got here? A little bit of a triple threat here.
Yes, exactly, because the exam results are in and we have 3 Fs. I'm actually sending letters to these companies today or tomorrow, and I can tell you these report cards are not going to be ones that these companies going to want to take home to mom to put on the refrigerator.
Yeah.
These companies are Oshkosh, Conagra Brands, and Regeneron. We issued sell alerts for these companies recently. So let's break down exactly what they're doing. We'll start with Oshkosh. And this is all your typical kind of things we're seeing from these companies. It's LGBT stuff and abortion stuff. We have other screeners that we do too, like human rights abuses, pornography, adult entertainment, gambling. But lately, it's been these 2 things. It's been LGBT issues and abortion, specifically donating and promoting these causes. So we'll start with Oshkosh. They joined the Wisconsin LGBT Chamber of Commerce recently. They provided donations to LGBT charities. And on top of that, they received a perfect score on the HRC's 2023-2024 Corporate Equality Index. So relatively recently. Now, that's not initially a cause for us to sell them, but it is something that when you see a high HRC score that you want to take note, and it's important to note that they didn't just get the high score. They celebrated the high score, and that's evidenced by the other things that they're doing. So it's one of those things, as you always say, Seth, where there's smoke,
just a second? Yeah, that's exactly right. Could you explain as much as you can the high HRC score? What does this mean exactly? What are companies doing if, say, they get a 95 or a 100 out of 100?
Yeah. So it's all kinds of things. So it's having these groups at the company that promotes LGBT employees. A lot of that's run by the employees themselves. Yeah. But where you get really pernicious, it's other things that like donating to events, also promoting transgender surgeries in your healthcare policies. Actually, I think that we have one company that does that as well. Conagra Brands, for example, their real issue was abortion, but they do also offer transgender healthcare benefits according to their company page on Built-in. That's kind of like LinkedIn, but more specifically for websites themselves. They're also in it for abortion. Like I said, we've uncovered a history of donations to a group called Girls Inc. That's kind of a feminist group for kids, which is as weird as it sounds. It does have a history going back, I believe, to the early 1900s. But the issue there is not that part really, as much as we might disagree with it. It's that the charity also does advocate against pro-life policies and is pro-LGBT as well. So really those policy issues as well. And then also, as I said, we have Regeneron's Pharmaceuticals, kind of the same stuff here. We uncovered a history of donating to LGBT events as well.
Sam, thanks for bringing that up to us, man. I'm glad you mentioned, So the LGBTQ alphabet soup stuff and the abortion stuff are not the only things that we screen against. As you said, human rights abuses, pornography, gambling, those are all things that would fail screens as well. But I think it's worth saying that it kind of seems like in the last couple of years, there's been a high concentration of BRI violations with these two specific vices.
Yes.
People killing babies and people transing children and celebrating sexual deviancy. Sam, I wanted to ask you this because we've seen this with Planned Parenthood, where it seems like, all of a sudden out of nowhere, Planned Parenthood, which, has been for most of its history an abortion industry, now is also doing trans stuff too. Why is that? Like, what's going on there? Those things don't seem on the surface to be connected, but we're seeing a lot of that where the same companies that are doing the abortion stuff are also doing the LGBTQ stuff.
Well, I think it's part of this cultural zeitgeist, right? Where we're always progressing forward to the next human rights movement, right? That's kind of what the left's been all about. The more pernicious parts of the left is we're always going to the next frontier of rights. So for a while, that was abortion, this idea that it's a human right to kill your child if you're a woman. So it's and that's kind of already played out. So it's like, where do you go next? Well, next thing we're going to do is this trans stuff, because until 2 seconds ago, that was unheard of. So we need to always be progressing forward. And unfortunately, there are limits to how far you can go before you reach insanity.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're exactly right. And you know what it does bring to mind too? I think we have to, everything goes back to spiritual issues. I really do believe that. And I believe that the physical and spiritual world are so intertwined in such a way that if you pull on the thread of one, you'll see a reaction in the other. And I do think that we have to consider as well, there's an attack on the image of God here. There's in the movement to kill babies, it's literally to kill the image of God. In the movement to celebrate sexual perversion and sexual deviancy and transgender stuff, it's actually part and parcel with that is a movement to stop the reproducing of image bearers. If you think about it, it's much of these, things happening where children are getting transed, they're becoming sterile, and so they can't have children anymore. Right. And so, this really is an attack from the enemy to try to destroy the image of God. And we shouldn't be surprised by this, should we?
Yeah. No, it's really upsetting too, because there's so many of these companies that you look at, like Oshkosh. You look at them and you're like, really? You're the type of company, you're not involved in these cultural issues. That you're not something that's in the cultural imagination. You can understand a company like Disney getting corrupted by this because they're more prone to the cultural influences. But then you get Oshkosh, Conagra Brands, and you're doing it too, and it's really frustrating because it's just something you don't have to do. Someone was asking earlier, they're saying, a lot of these companies put out statements. Why doesn't that make them BRI, not BRI? And it's because they're not using their funds to donate to these types of things. They might put out whatever ridiculous statement they want, but they're still not using your dollars to do the type of stuff we're talking about here.
Exactly. And we don't like that. We don't want companies to do that. We want them to have their yes be yes, their no be no. We certainly don't want them to pander to the spiritually dark monsters that are out there. But you're exactly right, Sam. We're interested in where the money is going. That is what we want to know. And, folks, these things that these companies are involved in, they're so sinister. These are why we want you to part ways with them. These are why we issue sell alerts. Why Sam said we're sending letters to these companies, letting them know how frustrated we are. It's so important for believers to not allow their money to be misused and really abused in this way. So, Sam, thank you for bringing that up, man. I really appreciate that a lot. And boy, it's a good reminder, folks, to see what we're fighting against here. It's not just political stuff that we don't like. This is a spiritual war. And there's a spiritual foe. And thankfully, we are on the winning side. We've got the Lord Jesus Christ who has stomped on the head of the serpent, and the victory that he won belongs to us as well. So that's great news indeed. We got the Ag Report coming up here, folks, and then more financial issues coming right after that. Stick with us. Here comes Craig.
This is Craig Haugaard with your Financial Issues Ag Update for January 14th. Corn futures closed higher yesterday as they saw some spillover strength from Friday's post-report rally. Corn received additional support from an extremely good weekly export inspections number, as well as ongoing concern over dryness in Argentina. At the closing bell, March corn was 6 cents higher at $4.76.5. Soybeans continue to surge higher as traders reacted to the USDA reducing U.S. soybean production by 95 million bushel. The U.S. Treasury announced intent to publish guidelines on 45Z tax credits, and we had a surprise sale of soybeans to China announced yesterday. All that combined to push beans sharply higher. March beans were up 27 3/4 cents, $10.53 per bushel. The wheat market had a strong start to the week, closing near their daily highs. Traders expect a fear of possible winter kill in the Delta and Southern Plains this week, as temperatures are expected to plunge. Minneapolis March wheat was 9.5 cents higher for the day at $5.93.5. Kansas City rose by 9 1/4 cents to close at $5.61, and Chicago was 14 1/4 higher at $5.45 per bushel. Cotton futures set a new life of contract low and then bounced up off it and closed higher. At the closing bell, March futures were 63 points stronger at 67.64. Livestock futures had a mixed performance. February live cattle were $1.37.5 lower at $197.40 per hundredweight. March feeder cattle were $1.50 lower as they settled at $267.90 per hundred. And February lean hog futures rose by 62.5 cents, closing out today at $83.17.5 per hundredweight. Class 3 milk futures traded both sides before ultimately closing higher. At the closing bell, February futures were up 33 points at 20.60. Well, this has been Craig Haugaard with your Financial Issues Ag Update. We'll be right back with more financial issues after this.
When we seek to honor God first in everything that we do, then we can trust God that He's going to give us a level of success, whether that means success as we measure them in our earthly portfolios or eternal rewards.
That's why we're here to offer all of you, our listeners, a strategy to help you defund darkness with your investment dollars so that you can fund the light.
This is for people whose eyes have been opened.
Become a partner today by simply going to financialissues.org/join. Click the green button to become a partner today.
If a woman sees her baby on ultrasound, it doubles the likelihood that she'll choose life. And on top of that, we share the gospel of Jesus Christ with her. This is why you should support Preborn. The donations that you give actually make a difference. Last year, 59,000 babies were saved because of what you have done with your generosity.
To find out how you can support the life-saving mission of Preborn, go to preborn.com/FISM.
My wife and I, we moved into this neighborhood. We had some experience with Crossroads Kids Club. We had served at another club. We kind of thought to ourselves, like, it would be really, really cool for us to actually bring in a club that was able to share the love of Jesus with kids directly into the school. And so we started our Crossroads at Hilltop.
Crossroads is amazing. You can learn all kinds of things about God. That He loves all of us. He died on the cross to pay for our sins. That He will help me in every way.
There is just such tremendous opportunity to reach kids in some of these areas that just aren't being reached.
Sometimes I pray every night. When I feel alone sometimes, God is right there sitting next to me. I can rely on Him no matter what happens.
To learn more about Crossroads Kids Club and how you can get involved, visit reachourschools.com.
The opinions and recommendations expressed on this program do not necessarily represent the opinions of the station or any of the program sponsors. Additionally, all products or services offered by the program sponsors may not be known by the program.
Hope you guys enjoyed that discussion. I always love getting to, talk about what these companies are doing. It's not always fun to see the bad things that they're doing, but it is good to see what's happening so that we can have a right response to it. And I think that our response with these petitions and with these letters and with the way that we invest, that's the right way to do it. We're trying to use our money. That's the influence that God has given us for good. And so I appreciate you all so much, the Financial Issues Army out there, using your money to honor God. It's awesome. Well, let's get to some headlines here, folks. Some interesting ones. Sam, what do we got to start here? Still January, so I guess we're still in New Year's resolution season, aren't we? What have we got here to start?
Yeah, I thought this was an interesting one that we can help our audience with, because I'm sure plenty of them are thinking of doing some sort of financial New Year's resolution. Actually, I know that because according to this survey by Motley Fool, in 2025, 69% of Americans, they say they plan to make some sort of financial resolution for the new year. That's roughly the same as the past. So you get a good chunk of Americans who do want to do something. The most common goal, as you can imagine, would be paying off debt. 24% of Americans said that's what they want to do in 2025, followed by saving for some sort of financial milestone like a car or a house, something along those lines. 82% of millennials and 84% of Gen Zers plan to set some sort of financial goal. That's more than Gen Xers and baby boomers. That's also consistent with past surveys, probably because they have more goals. They're more forward-looking in nature, so they are more thinking about what they want to do with their finances, as opposed to, say, baby boomers who might already have their finances more aligned in the way that they want. 74% of respondents are confident they'll be able to keep their financial New Year's resolutions in 2025. That's up from 66% in 2024. I wonder what the reason for that is. However, many still say that inflation could be a problem in actually achieving those goals this year.
Yeah, I think that's definitely spot on. Well, I'd love to hear from the chat, and Sam, I'd love to hear your thoughts as well. The idea of resolutions, I think the heart behind it is good. Definitely. And I wouldn't want to discourage anyone from resolving or making a promise with yourself to do something that's good. That said, I do think we have to be very careful to let our yes be yes and our no be no. And the simple fact is, it is hard to keep a resolution. If you make a promise to yourself, I'm going to do this thing this year, and then somewhere along the line, whether purposefully or accidentally, you break that promise, you have to at least consider that, and maybe it'd be good to ask yourself the question at the beginning of the year, if I'm going to make a goal, let's make it one that I can actually achieve. Sam, what do you think about that?
This is actually why I tend not to do New Year's resolutions, because I'm thinking, well, I'm going to fail in some way, and then I'll be disappointed in myself. That's not necessarily the best psychological attitude to have either, though, because that can prevent you from doing something that could help you, even if it's something small. But I think you're right that you need to really be humble when making these sorts of New Year's resolutions. You have to know what you're capable of, and then probably lower the bar below what you're capable of so you'll actually hit it. Because, I was teaching a prayer class in Sunday school, and some people just don't have any prayer life at all. So what I recommended is, this sounds crazy, I'm like, just pray for 1 minute a day. To get in that group. And that sounds absurd. It sounds humiliating to say, well, just pray for 1 minute a day. But if you're not doing anything, that's something. And what makes you think that you can go from doing nothing to, praying for 20 minutes a day? Same thing with going to the gym or something like that. We set goals of like, well, I'm going to go to the gym 4 days a week, even though I've been going 0 days a week. Why do you think that's going to happen just because it's 2025? 2024 was just a couple days ago. What changed? Nothing really.
Yeah, dude, that's exactly right. And I think it can be applied to your finances as well. You're talking about those baby steps, starting from nothing. Maybe there's folks in our audience who you haven't really tithed much. This might be a good opportunity for you to consider, okay, I'm going to tithe something. I'm going to give something to my local church, even if it's, and I'll be careful saying this, even if it's not the 10% yet, even if it's just something, 5%, 2%, something to get you into the habit of it. It's the same with investing as well. Maybe you're listening to the show and you have a specific percentage that you invest. Maybe it's 20% of your income, something like that. Maybe it's 10%, 5%. Maybe your goal would be doing a little bit more. Maybe if it's 5%, maybe do 7%. Something like that. I think that's really the thought here. And certainly, Sam, I don't want to dunk on people making New Year's resolutions. I'm actually really encouraged to see that a lot of young people have this gumption to want to do better, and that's really, really good. I think you're exactly right. Just being careful, and humble is a great word too. We got to be humble when we're talking about this. Very often, I think we tend to get into our own heads of thinking, I can do more than I'm actually capable of doing.
And I think setting concrete goals as well. So I was looking at some of these, and it's possible that this survey is just giving summations of what these goals are, but something like paying off debt. What does that actually mean? Are you saying I want a mortgage and I want to pay it all off in 2025? Or what you're saying is like, well, I want to pay off this amount of it. That'd be the better option as opposed to just saying paying off debt, because what does that really mean? You'll get discouraged because you have nowhere you're actually going. You just have this some pie in the sky ideal, and you don't know if you're actually hitting it. And you probably won't if it's something like just debt in general, because you might always have some level of debt to a degree.
Absolutely. Hey, Sam, let's do a quick pivot here. We got a great comment, Peter and Josie from Arkansas, saying, Seth and Sam, thanks so much for that spot on with Oshkosh and Conagra from the last segment. Said, my wife works at Conagra, buys their common every month. I got to get going, sell that stock ASAP. Thanks for the heads up. We're glad to help you there, P&J. It's awesome. So keep that up, man. Keep on fighting the good fight with your money. No, it's great.
Yeah, that's incredible. Yeah, that's great. And don't feel bad you didn't know about it. Some of these things that you think a stock's okay, and then you dig below the surface, go into some of the reports, and you're like, oh, there's something fishy going on here. And it's usually the companies that surprise you. It's like companies like Oshkosh and Conagra. It's like, what is that?
Yeah.
And it's very bizarre.
Folks, that's part of the reason, maybe not part of, that's a big chunk of the reason why we're here. Why we're here. Financial Issues is here to do the research that perhaps the common folk simply might not have the time to do it. We're here to dig deep into these companies to see if there's any drop of something that should be concerning. With the analyst team, with the work that Sam's doing, with the screening tools, all of that stuff, we're really trying to use it to the best of our ability so that we can present to you all options that really will honor God. And so that's part of why we're here. So. It's really, really good stuff there. Sam, let's move here now to another sort of January-themed headline here. I've never heard of No Buy January before this.
Yeah, talking about setting goals, this is an interesting one. So over 4 in 10 Americans say they want to participate in this challenge called No Buy or No Spend January. It's kind of what you think it is. It's a challenge to not buy or spend money on anything you don't need, and you can kind of make up what that is for yourself for the whole month of January. The idea of this is to reevaluate your spending habits, reset your spending habits, and perhaps make up for some overspending you did for the Christmas shopping season. That's the idea. Proponents who have tried it in the past, it's a relatively new thing, but those who have tried it say that, it does seem to help me realize, at least in perhaps some small ways, but some important ways, what I do and don't need, maybe some bad habits that I've gotten into over the years. But there are some critics to it, and I think that we should listen to them as well, because there is some validness to this, where they say this is not realistic. It's more like a crash diet where you're doing something extreme for the first month of the year, like we were talking about with resolutions. I'm going to go from 0 to 100, and that's just not sustainable. And what it could actually end up doing is having the reverse effect, where I didn't spend any money on anything in January, so when February comes down, I got all this pent up energy. It's burning a hole in my wallet, as they like to say, and I'm just going to blow that all in February. And that's something you have to be careful about, and something, you have to know yourself whether that's something you're going to do or not. What do you think about that, Seth?
It is fascinating, Sam. I think it is good to develop habits of restraint, and I could see No Buy January kind of being that. It's almost like this seems like it's kind of a natural response to what you saw as an emergency in December, where you spent way too much money and now you got to pivot. I do think there's a better option, though. I do think that there's a better option out there, and I feel like, just like you said, I think those critics are right. I'm not sure this is going to be realistic for long-term budgeting, and I think it can lead to overspending in the future, because you're starting to get into the mindset of extremes. So February comes around, like you said, and you're thinking, okay, I'm good. Now I'll overspend again. Oops, I swung back the other way. A better option is living within your means all the time. I think that's the best option. If you live within your means all the time, that will actually keep you from the need to ever have a No Buy January. Now, I get it is hard to live within your means at Christmas. We talked about that ad nauseum in the month of December, didn't we, Sam? But it's possible. It really is possible to do. I won't berate the Christmas shows that we did where we talked about Christmas budgeting and all that stuff, but go back and listen to those. I think that'd be really helpful. But if you live within your means, that is going to help you develop these habits of restraint all year round, and maybe you won't feel the guilt to have to almost do a purchasing fast. Maybe you'll just be able to say, you know what, I'm balancing my budget. I'm looking at my checkbook. I can see, okay, I've got a little bit extra money to spend here. Maybe I'll treat myself on something here, or maybe I'll invest that money far better, or maybe I'll better. I think that's something just worth considering, Sam, for sure.
Yeah, and speaking about setting realistic goals. If this does sound intriguing to you, perhaps a more realistic, smaller goal that you can do to learn how to balance your budget and learn to live within your means is do something small, like no spend at restaurants on weekends, or no eating out at restaurants for all of January. Something like that's doable.
That's great, man. Absolutely. And of course, as we're talking about resolutions and all that stuff, a great resolution for you to make at the beginning of the new year too is to consider if maybe a financial issues partnership is right for you. So check that out, financialissues.org. It was a great show, folks. Busy show today, of course. God willing, we'll do it again tomorrow. Shana will be back with us in the morning, of course. I'm looking forward to that. But remember, everything you have belongs to the Lord, folks. Let's be found good and faithful stewards with all of it. God bless you all, and we'll see you next time for more Financial Issues.
If we ever forget that we're one nation under God, then we will be a nation going under.
Thank you for joining us. This has been an FIA